called a telephobia, folks. Pick up your pen and write that down. A telephobia. It's the fear of not being good enough. They got a problem, and you start scratching that problem, that stuckness, and you got victim-centric stories. Sitting fucking ducks to the trash talk in their own mind. The Enlifted definition of mindset is the story that you tell yourself. I've been doing this one thing for 17 years full-time, which is researching, studying, coaching, presenting, and now teaching about the power of our words and stories. Asked up to talk about this stuff, and it's not a joke. This is one of the most important conversations that you can have, in my personal and professional opinion, as in, what are you telling yourself? What story are you telling yourself? And then how do you make improvements?
Welcome to the Evolving Potential Podcast, episode number 9. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Mark England. Mark has a degree in international education and is formerly a elementary school PE teacher. He was also formerly a fighter, had dreams of going pro. He even moved to Thailand to study Muy Thai before facing a serious knee injury and multiple surgeries. Since then, Mark has shifted into personal development, done a TED Talk, and become an international coach, speaker, and trainer. He has co-founded Enlifted Coaching, where he is the head coach and has certified more than 350 coaches. His methods have been used in over 10,000 coaching sessions. His work centers around our words, our story, and our breath, and he geeks out over language. Mark's work has helped people overcome victim mentality, imposter syndrome, fear, trauma, indecision, and more. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Todd.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, first of all, a lot of people will start with how you got into this, and obviously I'm very curious about that. But I kind of want to shift gears first and talk about what you're doing now and what the overall mission for Enlifted Coaching is heading into the future.
Those are good questions. I have a couple of goals. One of them is, and this answers what are we doing now? So a lot of what we're doing now has been us making moves off of our gut instincts and following the breadcrumbs at the same time. So the certifications, which is the primary everything for their business, they turned 5 years old in May, and we accidentally launched them. They launched themselves, really. Wow. So I've been doing this one thing for 17 years full time, which is researching, studying, coaching, presenting, and now teaching about the power of our words and stories. And it's had a couple of different flags. In the first 8 years, I was running it by myself. Since then, with my business partner, we teamed up in 2015, and we decided to make a course, an online course called Vocabulary, which was a very simple 21 lessons, 10 minutes a day, but 10 minutes per lesson course on how our words influence us for better and for worse. I mean, file a lot of that under stuff you didn't learn in high school English class, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. We put that thing out and nothing happened. Nothing happened in 2015. Nothing happened in 2016. Something happened in 2017. In 2017, and I could go on a very tangential, interesting story about how we got on the podcast. We went on a very significant podcast in health and fitness, functional fitness, and specifically CrossFit, called Barbell Shrugged. We went on that show. I flew from Thailand to Los Angeles to do that podcast live. That's called Showing Up, everybody. Jeez. On January 20th, 2017. And when that show dropped, we got introduced to the fitness industry by the best mouthpiece in CrossFit, and everything changed for us permanently. Mike Bledsoe, one of the guys on that show, and I became good friends. And eventually we decided, myself, Mike, and Adam, decided to create a course for the fitness industry. That's called Enlifted. And we launched it in 2019 as a instructor-led and self-paced course, 12 weeks long, from this event called Paleo Effects. And unbeknownst to us, that was the first cert. And that thing caught and took off. And then there's cert number 3. And now there's cert number 4. 10 people per cert. It was always small groups. And by the time we got to 6 and 7, Adam and I are looking at us and going, well, this is interesting and way more lucrative, because anything would have been way more lucrative than what we were doing initially. It was, we were on fumes for a couple of years. That happens. And now we just graduated group 43.
Wow.
So we've graduated 43 groups of level 1 students, 10 at a time, 9 weeks long. And yeah, I am the head coach of Enlifted, and I deliver all of our trainings and the certifications and going on podcasts. This is my 411th show
That's crazy.
that I've guested on. Yeah, I'm going to do 1,000, dude.
Hell yeah.
And then I'm never going on another podcast again. I promise you all that. I'm going to save that last one for Rogan. If he's still doing it, I'm going to save that last one for Rogan. And then I'm never going on another show.
You're getting there.
I did 1,000. Go listen to some of them, right?
Yeah.
And dude, our students are hungry, man. They're getting their reps in. They're getting their practice. They'll talk about it better than I do. So, it's one of those get out of the way things. Deliver the magic and get out of the way. It's a good model. And so, yeah, that's what we've been doing lately and for the past 5 years, is filling up certs. And yes, I do come from a education background. So lucky me, I'm a very happy guy, because I get to teach something that I'm very, to use an overused word, passionate, excited, and yes, obsessed about. I get to meet a lot of cool people on the way on the path too. So.
Do you have any plans on seminars, conferences, anything like that? Doing it big?
That's another good question. I just put 8,000 miles on my truck in the past 7 weeks, delivering 16 workshops in half of the states in the continental U.S. And 15 of those, since we're talking about CrossFit, were in CrossFit gyms. And yes, workshops, it's one of our strong suits for sure. We love presenting. We're good at it. Again, love the people that we get to meet. And we also do one event a year. We're not an events company. We do it for shits and giggles and to get everybody together. And as this thing goes, more events, bigger stage, I'm comfortable talking to 3 people. I'm comfortable talking to 3,000 people. That's a skill that I've developed. And yeah, so as the brand grows, so will the opportunities.
Yeah, I was curious about that, because as the head coach, you're obviously doing a lot of the legwork yourself. And I think it's amazing people that get into some sort of career where they're totally down to do it until they're old and can hardly walk. People like Bob Proctor and Brian Tracy, these guys are on stage at 80, 85, 90, doing it forever. And so I always get curious about that. Like people like yourself, if you make it to Joe Rogan's show and you have these big events, it's like at some point, maybe you step back from the head coach role at Enlifted and you're doing something that doesn't cause you to have to do so much legwork. And so do you see something like that for yourself?
I do. So one of the goals, I've already mentioned them, is to do 1,000 podcasts. I'm on the way. And then another one is I'm going to deliver the first 100 certifications, the first 100 level 1 certifications. And at that pace, I'll be done teaching directly in Q4 of 2030. By that time, the curriculum for the certs, the ethos, the vibe, the community, it'll be baked in. And then there'll be plenty of, and it won't be us choosing them so much. It's more of the coaches choosing themselves, because that's people choose themselves. People choose themselves to be successful. They choose themselves to be unsuccessful. It's, a lot of it comes down to our stories. And yeah, there'll be plenty of coaches to carry on the certifications. There's some other areas that we can take this into essentially any arena that we want to, that people are telling themselves a story to themselves, which is the definition of mindset. We can talk about that later. So that's one thing to deliver the first 100 level 1 certs. And then also, like you mentioned, those old timers, those geezers walking around with canes and shit on stage, gray, bald, wrinkled, looking like prunes, and happy about it. I would imagine they're happy to be in the game at that age, because a lot of people don't pick a lane that they can compete in at a high level for a long period of time. So the first thing that I got obsessed about was fighting, and I was a mediocre athlete, and I was only going to get so far before I hit a wall of competition that it was not going to be pretty. So in a real sense, the universe spared me a bunch of ass kickings, and it also forced me into something that I can pour my maniacal nature into and get a way better return from myself and for the people around me than that. I mean, you got to be self-centered to be in like the not good kind of self-centered to be a fighter.
Yeah.
Or at least I was. And yeah, so when did I do that? I went and did a couple of NLP certifications, 2011, 2012.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, with Richard Bandler in London.
Okay, no way. Nice.
Oh yeah.
I'm NLP certified as well.
Oh, very cool.
I did Tad James. Not as cool as Richard Bandler.
Yeah, I mean, I went there. It's half of the reason I went was to watch him work. And the thing that I walked out of there with was a question. So there's I don't know, 1,500 people there. He's on stage, and I'm glad that we can drop F-bombs here because he did.
Absolutely.
This is what he said, and this is what he did. He goes, "I've been doing this shit for 40 fucking years." And I'm like 6 years into my career. I didn't know it was a career at the time, but I was 6 years in. And I just stared at him. And I go, I wonder what that feels like. That was in 2012. And I walked out of there, and guess what? There's only one way to answer that question. In one sense, I was screwed in a good way. And so we do our TED Talk in 2017. I started coaching in 2007. That's 10 years in the game. And this thing has held my attention the whole time. Thanks, universe. I was a terrible student because I was bored out of my head. And this it holds my attention. And I mean, even way more than that. And so I get off stage at TEDx, and we knocked that shit out of the park. It was a major step up in competition for us, as far like competing with yourself as far as a stage is concerned. Yeah. Before that, I'd spoken in front of 300 people, and that was 1,800 people in the audience, live streamed to 150,000 people around the state, wow. Recorded, put on the internet forever, no matter what happens, and then also in my hometown at the most beautiful theater that we have, the Carpenter Center. And we trained like pros, prepared for 3 months, walked out there, knocked it out of the park, got off stage, went back to my hotel room and stared, opened the door, locked the door, got on the bed, stared at the wall, and the wall it turned into a movie screen. And I just saw a bunch of stuff. And I go, okay, I commit. I'm going to do this for 50 years. I'll be 80. Yes. I'll be 80. It's in my calendar right now. I went into my calendar and scrolled down to January 17th, 2057. Takes a little while to get down there.
Yeah.
And it's my last day on the job. And after that, I'm never talking about this stuff ever again. I'll fight somebody if they try and have a conversation. 80 years old and mean. But until then, I got stuff to say about words.
Yeah, that's crazy. So first of all, how did this barbell shrug company, the podcast, how do they find you? You said you were pretty obscure at the time. You had been doing it for 2 years. How did you end up getting this opportunity to fly out to LA?
So strange. Well, this brings up a conversation about generosity. And I talked to the students about this, and I'm like, listen, the universe, in my personal and professional opinion, shines down and supports people that have a generous nature. There's a warmth to it, and it's just, I mean, whose favorite person is stingy?
Yeah.
When you look at it that way, not many people say, "Oh, my favorite person is just super stingy." Anyway, I have from time to time I have a generous nature, and I give a workshop in Costa Rica in 2014,
Nice.
and I get off stage, and this guy comes up, and he goes, "Man, that was great. Do you do one-on-one sessions?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." He goes, "How much are they?" I go, $300 a session. He goes, "Man, I bet it's worth way more than that, and I just don't have it. We'll maybe we'll see each other sometime." And I go, and I watched him start to walk off, and I go, "Hey, buddy, buy me a coconut, and we'll go do the thing, like right then and there." And he goes, "Okay." So this guy's name's Daniel Raphael. You're gonna look him up. He 100,000, 150,000 people on Instagram. He just sold Wizard School.
What?
Oh yeah. And so we go do a session, and I'm in Costa Rica at the time, so it's obviously, and then I'm going to LA for the summer. He's there. He does some man on the street recording for me when I was walking down Venice Beach boardwalk asking people about abracadabra, and then he recorded it, and I showed him what to do. I taught him how to coach in the way that we do. And he did a workshop in 2016. He did a workshop at somebody's house in Encinitas, and got somebody out of the crowd, maybe 20 people there, to work on a story about a block they were having. And it went somewhere where no one was expecting, where it needed to go, which is usually the case. And the guy had a significant emotional breakthrough and release, and his breath unlocked, and saw things different. And the guy asked him later, he goes, "Where did you learn how to do this?" And that guy goes, he said, "My name." Yeah. And so in 2016, October 2016, I reach out to 5 people in the CrossFit space, 3 box owners, that's what they call the CrossFit gyms, and 2 regional athletes. Who's got the best podcast in CrossFit? It was fate, dude. They all 5 said Barbell Shrugged. And one of them came back and said, "Oh, by the way, Mike Bledsoe's aware of you and your work. Would you like an introduction? I think I can get it for you." And I'm like,
Wow.
what the fuck? And 2 emails back and forth. We're on the show, and the rest is history.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, so let's get into the work then. So first of all, you were a fighter and you had a knee injury.
Yep.
And so I know the story, but the audience does not. And so start from there. You had a knee injury, and then you were dealing with some victim mentality. You were obviously hurt emotionally as well as physically, and feeling like your career was over. And how did you start to overcome that and make your way into personal development?
Yeah, the story was way worse than the physical injury. How do I know that? Well, because I went into the kickboxing gym 3 days ago, and I can do whatever I want to. I thought I was, I believed what the doctor told me, and in one sense, he was right. I mean, I never fought again. He goes, "Your career as a fighter is over." And so me at 27, I'd only had my passport for 2 years, been out of the country once, and now I'm moving over to Thailand for a year. I had 3 going away parties. It was a big deal. Very big deal for me. And so jacked my knee up, jacked it up again, and then I'm like, oh God, I need surgery. So yeah, I get it, and then the whole thing stops, and I use that experience at the time as a final piece of damning evidence in a case I was making against myself that I was somehow doomed to fail. I was a born loser, and there was something wrong with me. Wasn't sure what it was, but it's called a telephobia, folks. Pick up your pen and write that down. A telephobia. It's the fear of not being good enough. And if you want to get all Tony Robbins about it, he said 95%, and he's either right or close. 95% of everybody's stuff boils down to that. And so, yeah, darkness descended, and I lit a dumpster fire victim mentality in my head and walked around with it like that for a year. I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh for an entire year. I don't recommend that. It's a very weird experience. And once upon a time, so I lived in Thailand for 10 years. That still sounds strange to say. I was an elementary school PE teacher at an international school. The second half, I was a coach at a cleansing and fasting resort. So our vice principal comes back from a 3-day cleanse down at this place called the Spa. It's a great gig. You go down there and pay them to not eat. And yeah, and I did. I went down and because I was a mess, and he goes, "Hey man, they're doing some interesting stuff down there. I think you might like it." I was like, "Okay," because I knew I needed to do something different, because it was the first time, and I'm not a wise person by any stretch of the imagination, but wisdom showed up and tapped me on the shoulder. And I go, and I said, "Dude, are you gonna be complaining about that whole thing when you're 55? If you do," I was 27 at the time, "if you do, you really will be a loser. You really are a loser." Because I saw that version of myself, and it was not fun. And so I go, okay, I need to do something different. Right around that same time, the vice principal came back. He's like, "Hey, take a look at this." And I'm like, okay. So I go down there, and something happens. I'm like, okay. And I go back again, and I'm like, okay, yes, I feel better, and this is oddly interesting, and these hippies aren't that weird. And so I go back a third time, and this is in 2003, and I went to an emotional detoxification workshop. And I mean, I laughed at the title before I went, because I'm, like I said, not a wise person. Emotional detoxification. And I went. Got to show up, folks. And I met my mentor, a guy by the name of Barry Musgrave. And he talked about words, and he talked about breath, and he talked about stories. And then he goes, "Is anybody stuck on a story?" And this woman shot her hand up. And she proceeded to tell the story of a very public and humiliating breakup. Essentially, her and her friends went to the beach. They got a house at the beach week. And her boyfriend and his friends got the house next door. Add alcohol, press play. He hooks up with one of her best friends in front of everybody the night before, and then dumps her in front of everybody the next night.
Holy
sound fun?
Yikes.
Dude. And she's hella pissed still after 4 years.
Yeah.
Because time doesn't apply to the emotional body. And he had her tell the story 3 times. First time through, the story didn't change anything. Just let her have it. She's, crying and angry. And second time through, he started changing some words for her. She was like, the story started to loosen up a little bit, and everybody's starting to lean in, like something's happening over there. Then the third time, he stopped her at the linchpin sentence, the Lord of the Rings sentence, the one that held the whole thing together. The whole thing being her victim mentality about what happened. And that sentence was, this guy was smart. He had her slow it down and repeat it 3 times so everybody's staring at the same sentence, the same spell. Webster's definition of a spell, not mine. It's a word or a combination of words of great influence. And that sentence was, "He did that to me." It's like, say it again. "He did that to me." Wonderful. Say it one more time. He did that to me. He goes, that last word, take that out and put in himself. And talk about a record scratch, because there can be good record scratches, kids. It was such a change of direction that she stuttered, and then it went into up talk at the end. He did that to himself? And then the breath unlocks. Good luck changing your mind, or good luck changing your client's mind while their breath is trapped in their chest, everybody. And then the breath unlocks. He did do that to himself. And she started talking about how he lost friends and it was worse for him. And then finally she goes, that was never going to work out anyway. It was actually really weird. And everybody's like looking like this. And I go, that's the second coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. First time was when I got choked for the first time. I was a wrestler in high school. Cool. You pin me, I pin you. I mean, like, cool. The first time I got choked, I was like, oh, that's different. And I had to learn it. And so I got obsessed. And then the second time was when I saw that, and I was like, that's the second coolest thing I've ever seen. And I've got a he did that to me story. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. We were just warming up. And you now have my attention, Barry Musgrave. And I had no clue what it was going to turn into. Again, this thing reeks of fate from start to finish. And yeah, man, like I said, I wasn't a bad student in school. I wasn't a disruptive student in school. I was a destructive student in school. I caused problems on purpose and got off on it. Partly, and I have a degree in education, and I was a school teacher for 5 years. But the two main reasons that I was on purpose a problem was the kids aren't supposed to sit that long. You know how many times I've said that? I haven't had one person say, you're wrong about that. Children are not supposed to sit that long. And then two, the curriculum, which is boring as shit. I mean, Who cares about 90% of that stuff? How much do you use 5% of the stuff that you learned in public school?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I mean, other than the words, but guess what? You're going to learn to speak anyway. And the writing, yes, the writing helps. But as far as like when I look at it, I'd take you out of it. When I look at the amount of time and energy that gets dumped into that beast of an industry, what a waste of talent. What a waste of talent. I mean, what do kids come out of public school with? I know I'm off on a tangent. I do it.
That's good.
And professionally. What do kids come out of public school with as far as their mindset, which is the story that you tell yourself? That's what Enlifted. Okay, so you could ask Google, you meaning anyone. I highly recommend doing it. Ask Google, what's the definition of mindset? And you're going to get 17 definitions on the first page alone. In my personal and professional opinion, Enlifted has the best definition of mindset because it's the most simple. The Enlifted definition of mindset is the story that you tell yourself. That's what it is. We have stories about our body, stories about our money, stories about our partner, stories about our business, stories about the government, whatever. It's stories. And guess what those stories are made up of? Words. And all that time in those classrooms, people come out usually struggling with self-confidence and belief and zero sitting fucking ducks to the trash talk in their own mind. Zero ability to use their words consciously to stay focused on what's important, to keep the drama low, to build themselves up in their feelings, to unlock their breath. Most people are walking around with their breath trapped in their chest, and it's because of stories. And what happens there? Well, how about you're a shitty listener? Because it's called amygdala hijack. Look that up. When someone's breath is trapped in their chest, their ability to listen goes way down. Their access to their creative faculties goes way down. We get myopic and not on the good stuff, focused on the problem. And then very rarely does that feedback loop change itself. Yeah, so I mean, I understand. And so back to why I'm so appreciative of this work. it's held my attention the whole time, and it's part of the reason that Enlifted exists. I mean, there's of course there's a lot of people involved in this thing, and from our students to the team to just people that have us on podcasts. Thank you. And on my side of the street, part of it is that I get jazzed up to talk about this stuff, and it's not a joke. This is one of the most important conversations that you can have, in my personal and professional opinion, as in, what are you telling yourself? What story are you telling yourself? And then how do you make improvements in it? It's like, well, I'll tell you how. You're going to have to change your words. And if you're changing your words, then you're going to change your breath. Those are the two most foundational components of the most rubber meets the road components for mindset: your words and your breath. What words are you using, and how are you breathing while you're using them? Good luck separating them. And so, you learn this, and really the keys to the kingdom.
So did this guy, Barry Musgrave, did he take you through an exercise, or did you went down to the emotional detox workshop? And is that when you started telling your story, or becoming aware of how that story was holding you back? I know you said you had that moment where you didn't want to be a 50-year-old still telling the story. So you had a moment of self-awareness of like, okay, yes, I'm telling myself the story, and at some point I'm going to have to let go of the story. And then when did you start to kind of unravel that and begin to work on that?
That was and is a process. I've gone into the scary stories, and I've picked up that 600-pound pen, and I've written them down. Okay, that's where a lot of this stuff starts, in our opinion. And then there's the maintenance of it. So I was the toughest nut to crack, because I was so jaded and guarded and embarrassed about everything. The outer shell of me was hard. The inner world was scared. And yeah, so I'm going to pick one thing you asked and then riff on that, because it's a lot of things. And for me now, it's funny. Did he put you through an exercise? So he did that. He demonstrated that. And then he showed us how to do it. And he paired us up with people. And I got paired up with this woman. And we had 5 minutes so I was a coach and she was a client, and then switch up. And so she's the client first. And 5 minutes. Okay. Tell a story, go into a story. And she goes into some story, and I'm doing the best I can. And then he goes, okay, switch. And I looked at her and I go, I'm sorry, I'm leaving now. Because I wasn't talking to anyone about anything.
Oh my gosh. And
one of the things that attracted me to, you've done your NLP certified. It was an emotional freedom technique workshop, the tapping.
Yep.
And so one of the things that drew me to it is you can do this work on yourself, by yourself. And I was like, I will do that. I'm not talking to anybody about nothing. And yeah. I'll go in there on my own, which it will work to some degree. And you know what? Some degree is a great degree. Yeah. And so I got up, and he goes, oh, by the way, there's this 82-page manual that you can go. And I was like, okay. And so I literally said, sorry, I'm leaving. And I got up and I went to the internet cafe. It's 2003. And printed off an 86-page manual on how to do EFT. And I went back to my bungalow and I started tapping on shit. And kept on with it, man. And yeah, I studied with I got to 8 of the 9 founders of the systems that most impressed me. The ones that I knew of. There's a lot of great stuff out there that I'm ignorant about. One of them, I did a 5-day training with Gary Craig back in the day. Got to see our man Richard Bandler, Bob Stevens from Conscious Language, Byron Katie. Did 8 days with Bert Hellinger from Family Constellations. In Quito, 3 days in Quito, and then 5 days in Bad Reichenhall, Germany, and then there's some others. So I went around and I popped the hood on some stuff. So yeah, he took it like I'm reminiscing of, you know, that those early hard intense, which is really tense. So I've given well over 750 workshops in person over the years, and like this is when I say this is what I've been doing somewhere between full time and overtime the whole time. I mean that. And in the early days, I have way more fun now. You know why? Because I'm breathing better. In the early days, people would go, "Man, you're so intense up there presenting," and I'm like, "Yeah, cool." Until I realized what they were saying. Take off the first two letters. You're tense.
Mm-hmm.
Not good. Tense. Where do people breathe when they're tense? In their chest. What are people that are tense not being comfortable? I was like, oh, right, okay. So, yeah, man, I'm better now. I'm better.
So you did all this work yourself. You refused to talk to anybody about it, and you kind of unpacked your story on your own.
Until yes, and I got a crack in the door, and then eventually I did work with other people, and I'd go to workshops and seminars, and I'd participate, and I'd cry about shit I needed to, and I'd a lot of that stuff's real, everybody. Stories kept in your head. I mean, this is not rocket science. Stories kept in your head, which is where most people keep their stories, the scary stories and the good stories. As far as the scary stories is concerned, they take up a lot of space. They swirl, seemingly infinite, very disorganized versus once they're written down. Negative stories kept in the head trap the breath in the chest, which means the picture is up close and scary and in your face. It's oddly enough, it's the opposite for the positive stuff. Positive stories kept in the head, which people have them. It's called celebrating wins or celebrating progress. They're very far away and not that meaningful. Oh, it's not that big of a deal until you write it down and get the air in there. And the ouchy shit is way too close and meaningful. And so I, did enough work on myself to where my breath unlocked. So we're known as the language people. For the people that know about us, I mean, we're small fish still for now. And push comes to shove, it's about the breath. It's like we're here to help people unlock their breathing. Good luck enjoying it. Good luck feeling comfortable in your skin while your breath is trapped in your chest. And that's one of the things that's missing from most mindset conversations. One, the definition, a working definition, or even better, a verbatim definition of the victim mentality, because that's why most people get into this stuff in the first place. They got a problem, and you start scratching that problem, that stuckness, and you got victim-centric stories. So a working definition or a verbatim definition, I've got the verbatim definition if you want it, definition of the victim mentality, and then breath, breathing. Better words, better breathing. Yeah, so that's
talk about the definition of victim mentality, because I mean that's something that I think even you being involved in the fitness world is very true as well. Like I can't do things because of this and that, all the reasons why people can't lose weight and the things that they've dealt with or the things that they're dealing with. And I actually discovered you originally from a certification that I was taking called Beyond Macros. This was
Matt Walrath.
This was probably like 4 years ago or something.
Bro, Matt Walrath was one of the athletes that I reached out to back in the day, who's got the best podcast in CrossFit, and he was friends with Daniel Raphael.
Nice.
Yeah. And so Matt Walrath was the person that came back and said, oh, by the way, Mike Bledsoe's aware of your work. Would you like
crazy.
An introduction? Super crazy. And I met that guy in a CrossFit gym in 2014 in Venice Beach because he had some dots, some weird scar dots running down his arm. Also known
from a surgery or something?
No. Combo. The frog venom. Look that up. Frog venom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
And I've done that. And so no, it's not a toad. It's a frog.
Very interesting. I'll have to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, look it up. And so without that is so Good
Yeah, so
dude,
that's
man.
that's the big thing is like so the whole idea behind Beyond Macros was that okay, it's one thing to just take someone and give them a meal plan. And this is what I discovered as I used to be a nutrition coach, I used to be a
Okay.
bodybuilder, I used to do all this
Okay.
stuff. And it was like, dude, I can literally give someone the exact meal plan tailored to them, macros, everything, perfect workout program, and they're still not going to do it. And then they're going to start even potentially worse, telling a story about themselves about, look, this guy did all this work for me and now I still can't do it. And so I started really feeling bad about myself and my coaching ability, one, but two, it was like I was really jaded because it's like people say that they want the meal plan. People say, oh, if I just had the meal plan, everything would be fine. But ultimately, that's not what it is. There's something deeper there. There's something deeper we really got to get into. And that led me into the study of psychology. I got my degree in psychology. Now I'm moving on to sociology, understanding the larger problem here. And so language is a part of that. And so I'm very curious about how do we move beyond something like that into the victim mentality that people are in that's keeping them stuck, whether it's weight loss, whether it's, trying to chase their dreams, whether it's relationships. Yeah. So talk about victim mentality for a minute.
And two of the ways, in our opinion, of how you get people interested or more interested or engaged or more engaged in looking at their story as something that they can improve and change easily is first to demystify it and then to gamify it. First thing, so if you're going to demystify it, you got to have a simple definition. Mindset is the story that we tell ourselves, and then gamify it. We can play a language game or two on here if you want. So I'll do this twice, and for all y'all note takers, 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, and 80% of what we turn around, teach, share, or explain. So if you put pen to pen, most people have never heard the verbatim definition of the victim mentality. Never heard it. Usually the conversation goes as far as, they've got a victim mentality where they're playing a victim, and that's where it stops. Okay. Most people never heard the verbatim definition of the victim mentality, much less written it down. So I'll do it twice, once slow, and then I'll speed it up and put some polish on it. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That second sentence, everybody, right between the eyes, right where it belongs. So here it is slow, and then I'll polish it up. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. A person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, circle that word, on a habitual, underline that word, thought process and attributions. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual, which accurately implies duration and addiction, thought process. What's a thought process? It's how you put your words together. That's it. And attributions. What's an attribution? It's a characteristic. Other than the words, the most important characteristic for us is how you're breathing. It's really easy to take things personally with the breath trapped in the chest. It's real hard to see things different with the breath trapped in the chest. It's really easy to turn somebody into a villain with the breath trapped in the chest. And those words will do it. He did that to me. Look, 2 + 2 = 4, everybody. This is kindergarten math. 2 + 2 = 4. He 2 did that to me. 2 equal. If I say that, if Einstein says that, we're both getting the victim villain mental imagery. My dad always talks to me like a child. I'm in that sentence. My dad's in that sentence. That means I'm in the picture. He's in the picture. He's doing something to me. I need her to respect me more. She's in the picture, not doing something for me that I haven't been doing for myself. I mean, there's a big difference between that and I need to respect me more, or I talk to me like a child, or he did that to himself, or I did that to me. And there's so many, like, there's trusting the first version of the story that shows up in your head, which is, it's in your head, so it's not written down, and it's going fast. When people say that my life is out of control, what they're saying is that my story is out of control. And then if you keep going, that means that your story is in your head. The fastest way to slow down a story is to write it down. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. Take that to the bank. It's like the faster you go in a car, the harder it is to change directions. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. And the fastest way to slow down a story is to write the damn thing down. And people are profoundly underwritten, like majorly. And this thing can feel like it weighs 600 pounds. Yeah, and so it's good to be able to, in my opinion again, to reference or deliver a verbatim definition of the victim mentality in a conversation about mindset, again, because that's why people get into this stuff. I wouldn't have gotten into this stuff unless I had a problem to solve. And when I started scratching the surface of that thing, I was like, ooh, there's more in here than I thought there was going to be, which is fine. It's great. Something to do.
Yeah. So can we use your story as an example about how you had this habitual story going on about, okay, I see, I knew it. I knew I'm a loser. I knew that I wasn't cut out for this. Right. And then eventually at some point you started reframing that. And I know that's a big part of what your TED Talk was about as well, was you are a process versus, identifying at yourself as a failure. And so your story shifted from being a loser, being not good enough, to what?
Interesting you bring that up, because I just got off a 2 hour and 25-minute podcast this morning with one of our students.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I go on shows.
Going hard, yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, what's changed for you over the years? What stories have changed for you over the years from the Procabulary days to the Enlifted days? And this is pretty cool. Take out the pretty. He put a collage, like a timeline of, he went and got pictures of me presenting and, from 2012 up until very recently. And there's a progression for sure. I mean, one, I'm aging, and two, you can tell there's a healthy softening, because there is. And he goes, what's changed in that person? I'm like, man, not much. Not much in the core belief that I'm good enough to get good at this. Because I recognized that from the start. I was like, I can get good at this. Back to picking a lane that you can play in for at a high level for a prolonged period of time. I wouldn't be doing that fighting. And yeah, it's one of my superpowers. I don't need to be the best. I don't care who's the best. Those are just people's opinions. I mean, and if I had my magic wand, I just want to be the most simple. That's it. All I want to do is, and I do know this. I know this in my core, that I'm good enough to do this work and then get up and drink some coffee and go to work. So if I put those two things together, that's it. That's it. It's just a conversation about time at that point in time. I'm going to put hours on the clock. I know that.
And so what if someone is identifying themselves as a failure? They've tried to, so a big part of my podcast is myself going and chasing this big dream. And I know that a lot of people are chasing big dreams. And I know for a fact, working as a bartender, especially around a bunch of food service people who had these big dreams, who they've no longer, they decide to give it up. And now they see themselves as a failure. And now they drain away some of their sorrows through alcohol and really are holding on to some sort of story.
Mm-hmm.
And so how would we help them to reframe from I'm a failure, I tried it, it didn't work, it was too hard, I can't go back to school now, I'm in my 30s, this is just what I am now?
Well, first thing I would have them do is to write those stories down. 5 minutes is plenty to get that story, enough of that story out of their head and on paper so that they've got some space and clarity. That's the first thing. So there's this thing in Enlifted. It's at the same time the crown jewel of the Enlifted method and the Swiss Army knife. It's what our level 1 certification is built around, and 4 steps to it. Step 1, write it down, title it and write it down. Whether it's a general story of ouch and pain and sting and woe, or the time your dad punched you in the mouth when you were 9, you talked back to mom at the dinner table and broke a tooth, the worst time you were bullied, the breakup from last week, whatever. Once a story is on paper, it's so much easier to work with, and when people are dialoguing back and forth. And so step 1, get the thing on paper. Okay. And then 2, read it. And whatever happens, happens. Step 3, read that same story slow. When someone slows down their rate of speech, the breath starts to loosen up. And again, story kept in the head, going fast, breath trapped in the chest. Breath trapped in the chest is a demonstration of attachment to the story. Breath starts to loosen up, this white knuckle grip starts to go like that. And then let's just say it's 3 paragraphs long. Step 4 is you read that same story slow and then get a breath in between each sentence. And it doesn't sound like shit, but I'll tell you what, when that breath unlocks, bro, and starts to descend and those feels come up, it gets really real. And also because people can ride rough right over the most important parts. I was abused and raped when I was 17. I'm fine. Write that story down and let your breath unlock and watch what comes out. And so I've been talking about breath the whole time because we talk about breath, words and breath the whole time at Enlifted. So story in the head, breath in the chest, picture is in your face. Get the story written out and aired out. And as this is the mechanics of storytelling. As the breath unlocks and descends, the picture moves out, and you go from being a relentless participant to the observer of the thing. And therein lies the shift. And it doesn't take any smarty pants answers from me for a person to do that. All I need to do is to know how to work the levers of storytelling. And most coaches are not paying attention to the rate of speech. One, they're not getting the words written down. Most of the time, they're just sitting there holding their breath, waiting for something smart to say, to be wise, to have some good to have a good answer for them. And before that, most coaches drama bond with their clients. When you drama bond with your clients, that's you believing their story. It sounds harsh at first. Do not believe your client's story, everybody. Observe your client's story. No, what do you mean? I need to believe my client's story so they feel heard. They're not there to be heard. They're there to change. And why are you believing a story that's going to change in 35 minutes if you do a half mediocre job now? And then from there, most coaches are not paying attention to how they're breathing in sessions. And so the client gets emotional, which is going to happen when you're navigating stories with people, and the client gets emotional and their breath gets trapped in the chest, and then the coach goes, oh my God, or to some degree, and then you've got that trauma bond. Drama bonding is when you believe your client's story. Trauma bonding is when the coach and the client go into a stress response at the same time. Both of them are messes. And so I just go off on rants and tangents. So that would be a preliminary piece of advice to someone who wants to change the story. And if someone had a story, then I would ask them that question first. Do you want to change? I mean, and you can get all, I mean, you know this, you can get all gangster about it. You see yourself working in the food service industry for the next 20 years? No. Oh, so you're going to do something different. When? 14 years? 9? 7? 6.5? And you could back it into it. That would all depend on what mood I was in and how much they wanted to play. But none of this is rocket science. People don't need PhDs to create a story, and they don't need a PhD to change a story. Most of the time, you just need a pen and a piece of paper and just a little bit of know-how about the mechanism, the mechanics of storytelling. And a lot of that involves, are the words up here or are they written down? How fast is the story going? Okay. Where's my breath when I'm telling the story? And what words force me to see things in certain ways? What words spike the drama? And so one of the language games that we played in these CrossFit gyms, everybody, I'm Mark, thanks for coming. Write this sentence down. How can I ever make this lift? And they'd write it down. How can I ever make this lift? And I'd go, raise your hand if that created some feeling in you. Most people would. And I'm like, what's the feeling? And the other, hey, what's the feeling? And hey, what's that feeling? Oh, well, I don't know if I can. And I'm like, okay, cool. Take your magic wand and scratch out one word. Scratch out the word ever. How can I make this lift? So how can I ever make this lift? And most people, when they have that word in the sentence, they're going to inflect on that. Spike the drama, turn a perfectly good question into a statement of this is going to be hard or I can't do this. Pull that word, one word, 4 letters. How can I make this lift? Now you've got a real question. Now you've got a real question or a less emotionalized question. Carol Dweck would approve of this. Fixed mindset, growth mindset.
Yep.
If someone's got a fixed mindset, that means they got a fixed language. This is just the way I am. That's fixed language, which leads to a fixed mindset. Versus this is just the way I am thinking. So again, process versus outcome. Are you a verb or are you a noun? So yeah. How do you change the story? Well, do you want to? And then second, cool, right? You can't. Well, you can.
So one of the things that you talk about a lot is the soft words. And I loved, me and Megan actually talked about this last week on the podcast. Yeah, exactly. Soft talk. Yes. Me and Megan talked a little bit about this last time, and it was the example that she gave was kind of around how you make yourself appear to be wishy-washy when you use soft language. But I really enjoyed hearing on one of your podcasts how you talked about it gets you stuck in indecision.
Oh, dude.
And so I love that. And I really want to hear you talk about that because that's something that there's obviously things you're supposed to be looking out for. Yes. Go ahead and talk about what is soft talk and how is it getting people stuck?
This is, so to bring it back to demystifying or simplifying and then gamifying. Soft talk, there are 4 pillars to conflict language, which is Enlifted's description of the thought patterns that the victim mentality has to have. Thought processes the victim mentality has to have. There's 4 of them. Negations, projections, soft talk, dramatics. And soft talk, out of all of them, the last one we recommend exploring are projections, because that's where, usually speaking, that's the highest emotional charge. also known as that's the strongest stress response. That's the tightest the breath gets. She never lets me live my life. And so that's where people's attachment is the strongest. The easiest place to start the conversation is soft talk, because there's a handful of words and they're easy to just pluck out. Maybe I'm drinking too much coffee. Pluck out the maybe. And now you have, it's a yes or a no. So you're not going to talk yourself into or out of something for the most part. Because guess what, folks? Sometimes you want to talk yourself into stuff. Sometimes you want to talk yourself into stuff, or at least you want to know how to talk yourself into stuff. I totally want to know how to talk myself into stuff. I want to figure out what I want to do and talk myself into doing it. Dr. Rocket Science. And yeah, and then so most people have a black belt in talking themselves out of things. You didn't learn this in 10th grade English class. Or at least creating, it's indecision, chronic indecision. It's the eighth deadly sin. I mean, I'd talk about that. This is what we finished with in all those workshops I did. And hey, raise your hand if you like prolonged bouts of indecision. No one ever raises their hand because that feels like shit.
Yeah,
it feels horrible. And Malmodia says, I prefer the fear of making the wrong decision to the terror of indecision. Yeah.
You can say that again.
I prefer the fear of making the wrong decision to the terror of indecision.
Yes.
And it is terrifying if you take it far enough, because this is the power of identity, for better and for worse. If someone practices indecision, if they've got a lot of, rattle these off. I'll do it like this. It's fun. There we go.
Yeah, that looks good.
Probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly, sort of, kind of, potentially, hopefully, try. One day I'm going to make something happen versus today. Should, almost like. It's almost like I'm procrastinating. If you use these words, it's going to be real hard, that's an understatement, to make a decision, to be decisive. And if you do that for long enough, then eventually you're going to identify yourself as an indecisive person. And when someone does that, it's like when kids identify themselves as a musician. Their ability to play goes through the roof. Teddy Atlas said this. He's one of the best boxing coaches and analysts ever. He said champions get 30% better overnight by winning the belt, because they now identify themselves as a champion. And that little thing goes both ways. So if someone identifies themselves as a loser, they just got 30% better at being a loser.
Oh man.
Or if someone identifies themselves as punctual, they just got 30% better at being punctual. And most people are not paying attention. They're not thinking about their thinking. They're just thinking. There's a difference. And so that's, the two things we teach: creation, awareness and creation. Awareness of the words, and then, hey, here's the words. Create what you want. And we're Switzerland in the whole thing. If somebody wants to, be a hot mess, dumpster fire, and that's their business. It's clean. It's clean. Yeah, and so why is soft talk? This is the gateway drug to the rest of your language, because all you got to do is pluck out a word or two. Until you have, and it'll happen the first time you do it, you have a feeling response to it. I'm sort of avoiding the conversation. You take out sort of, I'm avoiding the conversation. Now you got a yes or no answer. Am I doing it or am I not? And one of the reasons this is scary for people is because now that they've got a yes or no answer, they got to do something about it. So this is one of the main ways that people, and it's a fallacy, think they keep themselves safe by not making a decision.
Yeah.
Because if I got to make a decision now I got to do something, and now I'm going to find out whether I'm good enough or not. And so back to a telephobia. This is, if someone thinks in maybes and mights and sort ofs, they do a pretty good job, take out the pretty, of never finding out some very
Yeah, like
important
I should
symbols.
probably go back to school, or one day I'll get into a career that's better.
Exactly. Fellas, go up to a girl and go, I think I might want to maybe take you out on a date one day. See how that goes.
Yeah.
See how that goes. Yeah, so that's we talk about this a lot. Soft talk. Obviously, I've handed out thousands of these, 3,000 on this past road trip, and I don't know how many of these plaques I've made. Keep
Yeah,
giving them
that's
away.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. I learned that in NLP as well about the word try, about how try is used as a convincer in hypnosis. Try to lift your foot off the ground. And the harder you try, the more you'll find that you cannot lift your foot off the ground. And that word try is used there to literally convince people that they can't do something. And it's crazy. And so it's like, I'll try to do this, I'll try to do that, and try convinces a great amount of effort without actually making any progress doing something.
I didn't learn about that in ninth grade English class. I had to,
So I have
I learned about past participles.
right.
I
So I
don't
have a
know past
question.
participles. Yeah.
I took when I took my NLP course, we learned something called a personal breakthrough session. And people tell you their story and you write down as much as you can. You type out as much as you can to get it out, to get their story on paper. And then you go through and you find the limiting beliefs and you find the language things that they're using, the language patterns. And so I was just kind of curious in my own mind, how might that differ than someone writing out their own story?
I'd rather have it in their words. Why include an extra filter?
Yeah, so I mean, you're already using their words. If I was on a coaching call with somebody and they were telling me their story and I was writing it down, would it be potentially more powerful for them, like I said, to pick up that 600-pound pen and to actually write it out? Because you said it's slowing down the
Yeah.
story, which I think is very powerful. And so I was kind of curious if, in your own opinion, you took a different NLP course than me. You potentially learned different things than me. I don't know what Richard Bandler teaches. I do have his book, Transformations. I've read that, but I don't know how that might differ than just listening to someone tell their story and writing it down versus having them pick up the pen, write out their story.
Yeah, well, again, it's going to be their words verbatim. I don't want my interpretation of their story. I want their story. And I want them to participate in the changing of it. And
And so if someone's at home right
definitively,
now,
it'll be better for them to write it out.
so if someone's at home right now and they're writing out their story, they're writing out their story of why they haven't gone after a new career, why they haven't been able to lose weight, whatever it may be, whatever they're struggling with. It's usually like the stuck and suck, which I heard Megan talk about last week, right? And so they're
How
writing
did
out
you
the
come?
stuck and
How did
suck.
you come? How'd you meet her? By the way, she's great.
So we did the same certification called Mental Performance Mastery.
Oh,
And then
cool.
I've just been on a mission to find anybody doing anything similar to what I was thinking about doing. I was thinking about doing these one-on-one sessions with people, mental performance
Mm-hmm.
coaching. And so I've been very curious. I was like, who the hell is doing what I want to be doing in the world? And are they happy? Are they happy doing what they want to be doing? And trying to figure out which lane where I want to find myself in. And so throughout these conversations, I found myself really actually just enjoying these conversations and learning from these type of people. And I was like, shit, I'm just going to make a podcast around this. I'm just going to start learning from these type of people. So I reached out to her, asked her if she'd be on the podcast. And she said,
Genius.
absolutely.
Genius. Oh, dude, you'll learn. Yeah, you'll learn everything that way.
Yeah. So just talking to mental performance coaches or psychologists or anybody who's really high up in the coaching, does things a little bit differently. It looks at the world a little bit differently, thinks bigger, and understands how the mind is generally the thing that's holding us back, not the tactics, not the strategies, not the productivity calendars, not the all that stuff. It's all valuable, but it's not the thing that's usually holding people back. And so I think that that's valuable whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a Joe Schmo, trying to improve your life. Like that is something that everybody needs to realize is that it's the mind, but the mind is, and the mindset, as you said, is the story you're telling yourself. And so when we start creating that awareness, obviously step one is creating that awareness. How do we become aware that we're not actually the story, it's a story we're telling, and we can start to change some of those words. So that's why I wanted to talk to someone like you that really, really understands the power of the language we're using. And we're going around, we're telling our story. And I hate the fact that people go around and gossip and people love sharing, oh, this happened to me today and this happened to me today and this is what I'm dealing with. And then someone else tells their bad story and then everyone just kind of trauma bonds, as you were saying.
It's a victim
And
Olympics. Who's got the worst story?
it's so damaging. Yeah. And I hate doing that. And so I'm usually one of those people that's the opposite influence. Someone starts telling me their story and I start flipping it on its head the best that I can. I start finding those language patterns. Oh man, I had such a hard time. I'm like, oh, so you learned a lot. you know?
I bet you've had mixed bag results from that. Not results, mixed bag. Some people are going to really like that. Some people are really not going to like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because some
absolutely.
people want you to believe them. Some people want you to validate their stuck and suck.
And so if someone's at home and they're writing down their stuck and suck, they're looking for soft words. They're looking to create awareness, create some space around the story. They're looking to put a little bit of breath between the story, between words that they're saying potentially. Is there anything else that's like, once I've written down my story, what am I looking for to start making changes to that story?
Well, you already have, since you've written it down, because you're going to get more detail in writing the story than you are thinking about it or telling it, which is the same reason why I want them to write the story down instead of them talking and me writing it down. Here's why. We think faster than we can speak, and we speak faster than we can write. And so by someone writing slows the story down majorly. And so what happens when the story is slowed down, you get more detail. And very frequently, that the act of doing that, and it's way more organized. Story kept in the head, disorganized. Story written down, way more organized. And so you've externalized it, you've slowed it down, you've organized it. That's a big deal. That's step one. Step two, read it. It's going to be different than you telling it. And whatever you feel, great. All right answers. Feel like shit, awesome. Feel a little bit hurt, fantastic. Not much at all, wonderful. Step three, same story. Read that same story slow. We've run all the split tests. It's 30%. 30% slower than your normal rate of speech. And so 70% of your normal rate of speech. When someone slows down their rate of speech, it's the difference. So a story kept in the head, that's basically a sprint. Okay. And we've all sprinted before. And when we sprint, field of vision goes like this. We get myopic. Breath trapped in the chest, myopic. We go on a stroll, a slow walk. So the mechanics of walking and running apply to the mechanics of story as far as rate of speech and speed goes. So someone goes on a slow stroll, and you can observe this. Don't believe me. Test it out. It'll take all of 6 minutes. Go on a slow walk and watch what happens. You zoom out. And then step 4 is that same story, slow read, and at the end of each sentence, and then read the next sentence, and then and keep going until you're through. And what's going to happen with no prompts? It's not like I have to tell them, okay, now make the picture zoom out. Breath in the chest, picture, breath trapped, story in the head, breath trapped in the chest, picture in your face. That's the mechanics of this thing. Story written down and aired out. As the breath descends down, the picture zooms out, and you go from participant to observer. And that's a really big deal. That's a really big deal. Really big deal. We had someone in our workshop 2 years ago Well, it wasn't our workshop. It was our annual event. We're not an events company. We put one together. I think I talked about this earlier. First, we like getting everybody together. And 2 years ago, it was at On It in Austin. And ours this year is also at On It in Austin. We're friends with them. Anyway, 2 years ago, I worked with 4 people. The first woman, she had a story of her first night of school in first grade. She had her first panic attack because she thought that she had to get every answer right or else her parents wouldn't love her. So this 7-year-old girl having a freak out in the middle of the night, and she stayed puckered up all through school, got straight A's, but the story kept going into her life, and she was a super anxious perfectionist. Didn't like it. And so she wrote the story that did those 4 steps. It's not rocket science at all. It's the most simple, basic thing, words and breath. People don't write down their scary stories. They don't slow down their rate of speech when they're telling them, and they don't get the breath in between a sentence. Breath trapped in the chest. The thing is locked down, like good. And then she had something happen, and I asked her what's the story like for you now? And she goes, well, it's the difference between watching a scary movie and is the difference between being in a horror story and watching a horror story. And that's a big difference. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. So here, and this is an important rant. Does someone need to have a perfect mindset before they can go out and crush shit? No, not at all. Just turn the volume down on it. Turn the volume down on it. Okay? And that's easy to do. Turn the volume down on those stories, smile more, and breathe better. People can solve half of their problems, that's an understatement, with more smiling and better breathing. And that shit's free.
That's crazy. And I honestly love this whole philosophy as well, because when I took my NLP course, and I've told this story before, I was fully ready to be a practitioner. I was fully ready to help people, to get into the work, to take the clients. I was not ready to be the client. Very similar to you. You're like, I just left. You know what I mean? So when it was my turn, it was like, okay, let's talk about the limiting beliefs of another person. I'm like, cool, tell me your story. Tell me about your limiting beliefs. Writing it out, working on it, whatever, give them whatever advice we've been given to give them. And then it's like, okay, now it's your turn. And I'm like, oh God, like, I don't know. I have to like on the spot say what my limiting beliefs are. Or they're like, quiet your mind and what comes up in your subconscious. I'm like, I'm not connected to that at all. Like I can't quiet nothing comes up. Fear comes up. Wanting to leave comes up. You know what I mean? And so for me, the idea of this, personal breakthrough sessions that we kind of learned was a turnoff, because it's like, if I'm going to be coaching men, primarily men, and they have a story, but they don't necessarily want to share their story. They don't want to get into the emotions behind it. And so I think it's so much more powerful to teach someone a method where on their own, they could sit at home and they could write this out. On their own, they could sit at home and read it to themselves. On their own, they could put some breath between it. On their own, they can pull that paper away from their face and create some space and get themselves out of the horror story and into being the observer, being like in a roller coaster where you're safe. You're not in something scared, And it's like, I love it. I think everyone loves experiences like that, where like, I know that this is scary, but I know that I'm ultimately safe. And I think a lot of people are struggling to find that feeling of safety for themselves. And so along with the word of, creating space, I picture safety. I picture solitude. I picture just security, knowing that like, okay, everything is going to be okay. And then I can carry myself like that into the world, knowing that I'm okay now. And so this to me seems super powerful.
It's super simple, dude. It's comically simple. And you know how you run it with people virtually? Let's say so someone wants to do a session, how you run it virtually. You get on a Google Doc. Get on a Google Doc. They have access to the Google Doc. You have access to the Google Doc. Zoom call. Hit share screen. They're on the Google Doc. You're on the Google Doc at the same time. And they can type on it. You can type on it. doesn't matter where you are in the world, and they can write their stories down, and you can watch the words, and they can watch the words. And you can go in there and pluck out a maybe or soft talk or flip a projection, and they're watching it real time, dude. It's slick.
Wow.
Super
really cool.
slick. Super slick. That's how we run all of our Enlifted sessions. If I'm in the same room with someone and we've got 2 laptops, we're on 2 laptops.
Nice. So what would be the example of a projection? We talked about soft talk. What would be the example of a projection?
You are in my way. He never lets me think for myself. Here's one of my personal favorites. Look at what you made me do. Look at what you made me do. That's going to create... I just made them the villain, and I'm the victim, and I'm absolved for any personal responsibility. Dude, some people are just so addicted to that shit. So addicted to that shit. And so what do? If you want to, it's your business. Honestly, take this the right way, take this the wrong way. I don't care. I don't care what you do with your story, because I don't want to care what you do with your story. Okay? Like I said, it's clean. We're Switzerland in coaching sessions. If somebody goes, no, I'm not ready to let that go, I go, great. I don't want you to let it go either. If somebody's got a story and they want to go in there, I'll go in there. I'm fearless. If somebody has a story and they don't want to go in there, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go in there. And I'm serious. I wouldn't go in there for any amount of money, because that would fuck things up on a metaphysical level. Yeah. And so, like, you really should deal with that, blah, blah, blah. Who do you think you are saying that? How do you know that? You don't know that. Why would you want to know that? So anyway, if someone wants to dismantle this thing, learn the magic words that keep people trapped in the victim mentality. Projections are those things are tough. And the projection keywords are he, she, they, people's first names, you, mom, dad. That's all you need. That's all you need. I mean, cool's an opinion. I think it's cool when I'm able to go, ooh. Wow. And I just saved my entire weekend. Okay? Because sometimes, it's like, you never do anything around the house. What if they do sometimes do things around the house? I just started war. Like, whoops. But we were supposed to have such a fun vacation together. Well, you never listen to me. It's like, okay, here's another way of saying it. Pay attention to what words, when you can be a third-party neutral observer, pay attention to what words people use when they argue.
Yeah. The generalizations, distortions. Yeah, I learned that too. It's powerful.
And necessary if someone wants to stay focused on what's important to them. What's more distracting than a story? What breaks people's focus faster than a story? A story about something else, someone else, someone wronged me. It's like, it's just so weird to think about how much time do I spend, because I'm not investing it, I'm spending my time doing that shit. It's like, I've got my moments. That's cool. And I know what I listen to the words in my head. I pay attention to those sounds that come out of my face. I pay attention to what words I'm writing. Like I have a psychological and emotional immune system. Most people do not. Another way of saying it is, if we want to get all Alan Watts about it, and I love Alan Watts. When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way. Most people are not thinking about their thinking. They're just thinking. And there's a difference. I don't know if it is or not. And if God came down and said, thinking about your thinking is the ultimate awareness practice, I'd go, makes sense to me.
Yeah. Metacognition.
What else is there?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to learn some very interesting things about yourself? Think about your thinking.
Yeah. So I don't feel like we fully touched on this, and I want to get back to real quick. You had your story about being a loser, and then you created an awareness around it. And then you created a new story, which was what I was saying as part of the TED Talk, was that you are a process. So what is maybe now still the new story? Because, I mean, a lot of people at home, if they're trying this exercise, all they're simply going to be able to do is create space. And that's super powerful, like you said. That can take you very far. But moving on to creating a new story, a new quote-unquote identity, what did that begin to look like for you? Instead of being a failure, you are a what?
Well, the way to do it is celebrate wins. One of the ways to do it is to celebrate wins. What am I? I go back and forth. It's what I'm going to be professionally for the next 33 years. I'm not sure which one's more important, and I don't need to know. I am a teacher and I am an entertainer. Alan Watts said, he goes, I'm a teacher and I'm an entertainer. And before I'm a teacher, I'm an entertainer. I don't know which one. He knows which one he is. I don't know which one I am, nor do I care. Because good luck separating the two. Show me a good teacher who's boring as hell. Anyway, right? I mean, that's what got me into wrestling. My Dick Overton, the science teacher, was cool and he loved science. And I was like, oh, this is more interesting than last year's science teacher who was like drinking lukewarm salt water. And he's like, hey, you should come out for wrestling. And I liked him and his excitement. I was like, yeah, okay. Wouldn't be here if I didn't do that. If someone, the fastest way that I know to help someone consciously build an identity that they are good enough. Okay, so I can back up and I'll answer that question directly. Before, I didn't think I was good enough. Now, I know I'm good enough. I'm good enough to get on this podcast because I'm on this podcast. I'm good enough to be doing this stuff for 17 years because I've been doing this stuff for 17 years. I'm good enough to be the head coach of Enlifted because I'm the head coach of Enlifted, and I'm good enough to keep doing all those things. And that's all I need. Like I said, it's like, I'm good enough. I don't need to be great enough or the best. It's like just good enough to get in the room and stay there until you get what you want. And one of the fastest ways to do that is to celebrate wins. So people keep, what does that mean? Or celebrate progress. People keep the scary stories in their head. People keep the good stuff in their head too. They don't write that down. And oddly enough, you can four-step both of those things. And what's going to happen with the scary stuff is picture in the face as the breath unlocks, it zooms out. You go from participant to observer. That's a level 1 breakthrough. The good stuff, oddly enough, it's way far away and not that meaningful. So we four-step it, same, no cues necessary. Time to bring the picture. It does it on its own. I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it. You four-step the good stuff, and the picture gets closer, and you go from the observer to the participant. And so think about it like this. Most people wake up on the daily, and they put themselves on trial. It's like they've got a crazed prosecuting attorney in their head, relentless crazed prosecuting attorney in their head that is relentlessly presenting evidence, and a lot of times it's the same evidence, in a case against themselves. Remember when you did that? Remember when you fucked that up? Remember when she said this? Remember when that didn't work out? And you're like, bro, you said all that yesterday. Doesn't matter. Today's a new day. And then so what you do is you want to, if you want to, turn the volume down on that. Go get those pieces of evidence, and there's going to be some sting involved. It's nothing compared to not doing it. Write them out, air them out, and just, and then so the other side of the street, and that's the coaching progression, the Enlifted coaching progression, because that's where most people walk into a coaching scenario from. Very rarely does a client book in for a coaching package when the sun's out and everything's going well. No, they're stuck. They got a problem. They need some help. And then you start scratching the surface, and you've got cleanup to do. Meet them where they're at. Clean up the house, then throw the party. So the Enlifted coaching progression, it's not law, but it's a good rule of thumb. Get them unstuck, celebrate wins, then goal setting. Okay? You want to make things hard for people? I've made all the mistakes. Have somebody walk in and they're all fucked up about something and go, okay, yeah, I understand. You're really upset about that thing, but I'm going to help you set some goals and hold you accountable.
I've done that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, in my opinion, people in the coaching space need to have done that a few times, because that's how we learn. And then so the opposite side, the other, like I said, prosecuting attorney, yeah. And then you go, then if you're going to celebrate some wins, it's essentially like you're hiring a defending attorney, and they're going and gathering evidence and presenting evidence in a case for yourself that you are good enough. Those stories aren't written down either. Remember when you did that right? Remember when she was there for you? Remember when that worked out well? Remember when you knocked that out of the park? And you're like, oh my gosh, wait, no, I am good enough. So not good enough to good enough. That's all you need.
And so when you were facing your failing professional fighting career, what were some of the wins that you had at the moment?
None. I didn't get to celebrating the wins till I was talking about this on the last podcast too. We're talking about drama bonding and trauma bonding in more detail. I didn't know to celebrate wins till 2013. I didn't know to celebrate my wins. I thought, and that's because we were talking about rummaging. Rummaging in the Enlifted method is when you just keep going into the trauma. You keep going into the stuck and suck. Oh, there's got to be something else there that's holding me back. I'm going to find that one thing and then pull that string, and then I'll be ready to go out there and do the thing. And then when a coach only knows how to, and this was me for 4.5, 5 years, I only knew how to help somebody with a problem. Well, guess what I needed them to have? A problem. And if they booked in for a 10-pack of sessions and it's call 7 and everything's way better, and all I know to do is to work on problems, then we're going to go rummaging for problems. That's me. That's me. That's a sophisticated form of trauma bond. And there's 3% of the population are psychopaths. Really, it's called ponerology, the study of psychopathy. And so 97% of the people aren't. And so we'll just say that 97% of the therapists, coaches, psychologists, psychiatrists are perfectly well-intended people. And I don't care how good someone's intentions are, if you don't have the tools to help them, if all you know is to do is to work on problems, then what are you going to do? You're going to find a problem. Or find something that's ish and then turn it into a problem.
I was going to ask that about modern day therapy. Yeah, rummaging sounded a lot like some modern day therapy. Obviously, there's better therapists out there that know what they're doing, but I think a lot of it is getting people to continually, exactly, psychotherapy.
Yep, talk yourself in circles therapy. And when it comes to journaling, a lot of journaling is circle journaling. Get it?
So what does that mean?
You're just writing about the same stuff over and over and over again without resolution on an emotional level. Circle journaling, the definition of circle journaling is writing the story out and allowing yourself to believe the words. Look, I've got it in writing. And a lot of times it's a generalization of a thing, and the people just leave the words there. And that can go on and on and on. Okay, so I'm going to barf my emotions onto a paper today, and I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it. It's the equivalent of, that's why the breath is so important. Writing like that is the equivalent most of the time. Let me give myself some wiggle room. Most of the time is the equivalent of having a pot on a stove full of boiling water with a flame under it and a lid on it, and the lid's like this. And you go and just take the lid off, letting off some steam, and then you put the lid back on. Guess what's going to happen in 20 minutes or later? I'm a big fan. If you unlock the breath, you're turning off the flame.
And so is it that 4-step process that makes the big difference between something like circle journaling and story work? It's the breath, it's breathing between, it's creating that awareness, as opposed to just writing it, chucking it off to the side, waking up the next day, writing it again.
Yeah. It's the swing vote. It's the swing vote. Getting the breath loosened up and getting the breath in there. Because here's the thing. The breath is, it's the bouncer and the door. If the breath is trapped in context to a story, whatever you want to come out as far as feelings and emotions, it's not coming out. And the good stuff that you want to bring in and feel more of, it's not coming in. It's why affirmations, it's why the SNL skit Stuart Smalley exists. And it's why affirmations has got lots of fucking affirmations. And you need to repeat them for 108 days until it finally sinks into your subconscious mind. Oh, and buy this crystal too. No. If someone, so the Enlifted definition of wishful thinking is good words plus breath trapped in the chest. If your breath is trapped in the chest, it's just going to be this mental exercise that you're not going to feel. And then eventually you're going to go, I don't feel it. And then somebody's going to go, you need to do it for 108 days. 7, if you rep your affirmations, and I'm not even talking about changing the words, just keep them as it is, make it simple. Get a list of 10 affirmations and say them every day for 7 days with a breath in between each sentence. I'm going to sound smart. It's 3 different ways of saying the same thing. Socializing the idea, taking it to heart, embodying the concept. The breath lets the mind and the heart and the energy interact. If it's trapped here, you're blocked.
And so what is the main way of, I mean, where would you like their breath to be, and how does it get there?
Low and slow. Let's go with, where do I want their breath to be? Where do I want our Enlifted coaches' breath to be when they're coaching? I want it to be low and slow. We talk about that from day 1 of level 1 to the end of whatever level someone's on, because it's so important. That's how someone stays in observer mode and keeps themselves from drama and trauma bonding. Breathing low and slow. And and then you get to observe things. Breath trap. If someone's breath is trapped in the chest and they start coaching and this thing gets emotional, guess what's going to happen? A lot's going to happen. 1, your client is not going to get anywhere near the transformation that they could, because you're now entangled in their stuff, and you're going to get slimed like Ghostbusters. And I don't care if it's virtual or not.
And so someone at home doing this on their own, are you saying that the breath will become lower and slower as they create that space between the story in their head to putting it on the paper, to breathing, to really kind of creating that awareness of what the story is?
Step 1 and 2 is the setup. Step 3 and 4 is the follow through of a process in order to help people go from participant to observer. So not what the story is, because that's ultimately an opinion, whether you're observing it or you're in it. Most people, if they had their choice, they would be observing the story. talking about negative stories, as opposed to participating in it. Time doesn't apply to the emotional body. And in some weird way, some part of us, story in the head, breath trapped in the chest, people say I'm reliving it. Well, you know what? You are. On some weird metaphysical level, you're in there. The story is in you, and you're still in the story.
Do you have any other examples that you're willing to share of people having these breakthroughs? I loved the story of the woman. Do you have any other stories that come to mind of people really making a shift and then really seeing that breath release? I mean, you've done over 5,000 coaching sessions. Hopefully you can think of one.
The last interaction that I had at the last workshop that we gave was last week. So there was a guy, this is in Pennsylvania, and he'd never written any of this stuff down before. He was giving himself credit. And when you're writing, everybody, it needs to be conversational writing. I didn't get this on the table. Conversational, I don't make the rules, everybody. Half sentences and bullet points, don't cut it. It's not how we talk. It's not how stories have been told throughout history. It doesn't summon the magic. It doesn't work for a gratitude journal. It doesn't work for goals-ish. I mean, I'd rather have a half sentence written down than a full sentence in my head. That's the difference between a dream and a goal, everybody. A dream, if you're whatever you want to do is in your head, you do not have a goal, you've got a dream. It's not written down. Once it's written down, it's a goal. Guy wrote out conversationally. So conversational writing is writing as if you're telling the story. Full sentences and punctuation. The things that he had been doing well for the past year. And he talked about improvements that he made in his business, improvements that he made in his fitness, improvements that he made in his marriage, improvements that he made with some friends, improvements that he made with his kids. It was about 8-9 sentences. And guess what? He had never written that stuff down before. Why would I do that? Give myself credit for things? Are you nuts? And so four steps. Title it and wrote it out. And then he read it. He's like, okay, I've never done that before. Do something different, get something different. And then he read it slow, 30% slower, so 70% of his normal rate of speech. His breath loosened up. He's like, it's becoming more real to me. Take out real, put in meaningful. That's what he was saying. And then he got the breath in there. So step 4, he read it slow with breath. And it sunk in. He was able to socialize these ideas, these facts about himself in a much more real way, a feeling way, as opposed to a thought way over there. Because that's where the good shit stays. It's in the head. It's over there. Over there, not that meaningful. Let's make it more meaningful. Oh, you take out the it, put in you. Let's make you more meaningful.
That's
it was
powerful.
Cool to see. Yeah. He walked out of there. I mean, there's a handshake and a look that a man will give you when you've helped him help himself. I was like, crunch, gave him the nod. Or how about the progress the guy made from another workshop about his drinking? Hadn't drank in 18 months. You ever written that story down before? No. He wrote down what he had done, why he'd done it. His wife was sitting right there. He'd never written it down, much less read it in front of a group. Made it way more real. He goes, I guess I am strong enough to not drink. Look at that's exactly what he said. Look at what he said. I guess I'm strong enough to not drink. Well, have you not drank in 18 months? Yeah. Well, then take out the guess, because you're not guessing about it, are you? That's facts. The breath unlocks. I'm strong enough to not drink. So if you're not drinking, negation, if you're not drinking, what are you? I'm sober. I'm strong enough to be sober. Take out to be, put in and. I'm strong and I'm sober.
Wow.
His wife was giving him the eye too. Like, Good work, bro.
Wow. See, yeah, I love those practical examples.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So much easier once the story is written down, everybody. Make life easier on yourself, whether you're a coach or whether you're just somebody telling themselves stories, because that's everybody.
So I love the fact that you discussed that we don't learn any of this stuff. And I personally, I'm getting my master's degree right now in sociology and education. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts at all about, other than your Enlifted coaching, other than training up more coaches to train more people, which is amazing, awesome. How might people learn this? How might we socialize people into this type of thinking on a larger scale? How might we input this into schools or into the value systems of families and anything along those lines? I know it's a big question, but I'm just curious what comes
How do
out.
we turn playing the victim into something approximately cool as littering?
Mm.
Keep talking about it. Keep talking about it, and help the people that want to learn about it, and get a bag of popcorn and watch everybody else.
Yeah,
That's it.
you've talked about mental littering, right? Mental litter.
Not verbal litter. I've talked about verbal litter.
Okay, there you go. That's what you
that's a
call that. Okay, yeah.
that's some slang for soft talk.
So helping people to equate the victim mentality, victim mindset with something like littering or just
Yeah, yeah.
not
For some
cool.
people, yeah. It's what's cool about it. What's cool about it? And some people are like all about it. In some circles, microaggressions. You microaggressed me. What that does, especially when people are getting positive feedback and attention, people do anything for attention. People do anything for attention. You're flirting with disaster. Most people will never recover from those conversations, or identities that they take on. It's like somebody misgenders you and you go nuts. Well, guess what? You're going to go, especially if you're a 6'4" and broad shoulders and wearing a spaghetti strap dress. I've seen that. I've seen it.
Yep,
And
me too.
you're going to get misgendered on the reg, bro. So you're going to let these people. It's an offense. I take offense to this. Offense is always taken. It's never given. I take offense to that. Stop taking it. And stop training kids to be easily offendable. Most of them are never going to recover from that. That's sad as hell because you're stealing their dreams. How can they go do epic shit like that? They can't. They can't. All they can do is burn shit down.
See, and that is why I loved your TED Talk. That right there. I've got kids as well. I don't think you have kids, but the mindset of teaching kids that they don't need to identify themselves as a specific moment that happened. My kid yesterday is drawing a picture and he's like, "Oh, this sucks. I'm not good at this." And we've had these moments before, and we always reframe those moments as you're a creator working to create stuff. That it's about getting through that process of sucking to something better. It's not identifying as someone who's not good at something. And so I think that that's really powerful where people do create these identities versus I am a person in a process of improving. I'm ever changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Verb or a noun. Fixed mindset, growth mindset.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it comes down to the words, like we've been talking about the whole time, which is where mindset's going. Most conversation about mindset, big picture, philosophical, clunky, words and breath. Rubber meets the road. And then mindset, the story that you tell yourself becomes practical as you can practice telling different stories to yourself and other people. And then it's so much more fun that way. So much more fun that way.
Do you ever coach? This will be one of the last questions. Do you ever coach athletes? Do you ever have any specific examples with something that an athlete might be saying to themselves? A story they might be telling themselves?
I haven't coached externally in 5 years. It's everything's been the certs. Teaching and certifying coaches. So I'll pick up my private practice once I'm done teaching the certs. And we've got a lot of 35 CrossFit gym owners in our community, a bunch of coaches, got a lot of people that coach. It wouldn't matter what it is. It's the process is going to be the same. Oh, you got a big game coming up and you're shitting your pants? Cool. Let's get the story on paper and let's see what's underneath that. Okay. And you a couple sessions like that and okay, well, let's celebrate some wins.
That's perfect.
It's the same. It's the same.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to point to. Yeah, it's like whether you're working with athletes, parents, weight loss, doesn't matter. There's a story going on there.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So where can they find you? If people want to work with you, if they're interested in Enlifted coaching, becoming certified, coming to your once in a year event or anything like that.
The certifications, www.enlifted.me. That's our website. All the info you'll ever need about the certs. IG at Enlifted Coaches. And then our podcast, Get Enlifted. It's all about coaching for coaches, by coaches. And we have more people that don't coach that listen to us than do because we tell, it's very entertaining and tell stories and we're teaching. Okay. Because guess what? You can use the same stuff in coaching. You can use this stuff in coaching sessions. You can go out and use the same stuff. I mean, not necessarily 4-stepping stories on a Google Doc, but, take out some soft talk in your language when you're speaking to whoever at the gym. Watch what happens. Yeah, so there's that. Those three things. Website, IG, podcast.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Dude, I love the work you're doing, and is there anything else that you want to mention while we're on this? Is there anything else you feel like you left out? You feel like it's important for listeners to know?
Other than thanks for listening, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man.
We got a lot on the table.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah. Likewise.
Honestly, I'm very much looking forward. I'm very much looking forward to seeing where Enlifted takes you, to keeping an eye out for you being done, for keeping an eye out for that 1,000th podcast. 411, you said. This is 411?
This is 411.
Yeah, that's crazy. You're almost halfway there, man.
Almost halfway.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, thank you again for being here, man. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. All the way back from the Beyond Macros days to now getting you on my own podcast. It's been a long journey.
Cool.
And I'm
cool.
Honestly, it's an amazing pleasure to see someone so passionate about what they're doing. So that's the biggest reason I love having you on. For me, it's been the same thing. The coaching, the mindset stuff, the NLP, the psychology, behavior change has just taken me hold. And I have not ever stopped, and I don't think I will ever stop. And so meeting other people like yourselves is a pleasure for me. So thank you again.
My pleasure, Todd. Yeah. Very cool conversation.
Cool. Will you take care? Thanks for being here, man. And thanks for everybody for listening as well.